John Morosi, Insider at MLB Network and Fox Sports. Good morning, John. Thank you so much for getting up early this morning. You must have somewhere to go, right?
Well, Elliot and George, good morning. I'm actually on my way from Los Angeles to St. Louis for our MLB Network telecast of the Cardinals and Cubs tonight. So I'm greeting you from the great airport here in Minneapolis, St. Paul, off of a connection red eye, but feeling probably more awake than I'll feel in a few hours. But I'm still I'm energetic here during the trade deadline week, nonetheless.
All right, well, you get to St. Louis and get them re-engaged for Josh Donaldson. They were hot in his trail there last year.
I will do my best. Okay.
Obviously, JP, nice to talk to you. Obviously, the big news yesterday: Happ goes to the Yankees, and some fans in this city, John, are a little underwhelmed with the return. And then if you hear people from New York saying, "Oh, the Blue Jays did great in what they got for Happ," what's your take on the deal?
Well, George, I would always say that when you're trading a rental, that it can be difficult to feel really fulfilled in what you get back. And I think in general, the Jays did quite well, I think, in this trade. I think that they got two pieces in Drury and McKinney that are obviously, in the case of Drury, Major League ready. And Drury really would have been, I think, that the Yankees' everyday third baseman this year if he had been able to stay healthy. Of course, he had the bout with vertigo, and the Yankees were confident that they had gotten that under control here as the year's gone along. And certainly the emergence of Miguel Andujar made him expendable as well. And then similarly with McKinney, he's behind a backlog of really talented outfielders in that organization, with Clint Frazier in addition to obviously the cast of major leaguers, which includes now the injured Aaron Judge. But so I think that the Yankees were trading from a position of strength and depth. And the Jays are looking at how they can try to, I think, strengthen their positional player core for the future. Now, neither of these players, I think, in the long term at least, would interfere with the roles of the young group coming up, and Bichette and Guerrero Jr. obviously, and Biggio. So I think there's a way to make all these new incoming pieces work for the Jays. And I think maybe my other two thoughts on it are, number one, you're getting guys that are relatively, and in the case of Drury, I mean, they're Major League ready right now, and that tells you that the Jays are planning to be competitive still, or at least are hoping that this rebuild is not a very long one. In other words, if they had just gotten back a bunch of A-ball pitching in this trade, it would have said, listen, they're just trying to marshal as many resources for 2021 as they can. This is a bit of a sooner timetable for those arrivals, which I think is encouraging for the way this Jays roster could look in the near term. And I also think at some point this means that the pitching is going to have to come from other deals. I mean, clearly it's been in both deals that they've made here in the last 48 hours or so, it's been position player focused. So at some point in time, the next deals they make, whatever those deals look like, if they trade Stroman, you would imagine it's going to have to be with a lot of young pitching coming back.
Obviously, the Blue Jays and the Yankees have been engaged in conversation for a while right now. I wonder, and we've talked about it this morning, is there any chance that some other names have come up, especially since Sanchez went on the disabled list, and now you have a broken bone for Aaron Judge? Is it possible in any way that they might be interested in Curtis Granderson? What about Russell Martin? They're going to need a catcher. He's been to New York. We've seen him hit this year. It hasn't been great. But you want a catcher that knows his way around the business, knows his way around the city. We know the contract that he has. Any interest that there's a possibility there?
Well, I think it's possible on both. And obviously the Jays may have to include a pretty substantial amount of money in both of those deals if they happened. With the Yankees luxury tax situation and also Russell's offensive numbers, I think that would be a very appropriate request on the part of the Yankees. So I do think that it's a possibility, probably one of many that the Yankees are sorting through at the moment. And obviously the Judge news is just very fresh. It's just happened, and it was sort of formally announced close to midnight Eastern that he was going to have to miss the next several weeks. And this is where the Yankees have to figure out how aggressively they really want to play on this to see if they could strengthen their club and make a run at the division. I think it's obviously a difficult proposition for them to catch the Red Sox anyway, even with a healthy Judge. And now you have to really evaluate how much you're going to spend to to help your chances of catching the Red Sox, which are dwindling as we speak here based on the way the standings look. So I think the Yankees, if they make a play, I think Granderson would make some sense. I think Adam Jones would make some sense. I don't really see Bryce Harper being a short-term fit there in right field. I know that's kind of a natural topic to ruminate on for the industry about how Harper could fit into those plans given the Nationals' dwindling prospects of making it to the playoffs in the National League. But I think Harper, if he goes somewhere, and it's a big if, I do not believe it's going to be New York. I think he'd be going elsewhere if, in fact, the Nationals decide to move him.
John, you tweeted yesterday that, and you mentioned Stroman's name earlier, but obviously the Braves have inquired about Marcus Stroman, and clearly there's a relationship there between Alex Anthopoulos and Marcus Stroman. Is that something that potentially could happen before the end of the trade deadline, or a potential Marcus Stroman deal feels like something that would probably happen more in the winter than now?
Well, George, I think either or. This is a possibility that's well within play right now, and I think that the general quick pace of the market, I think, plays into the Jays' favor here because they were able to move and move Happ several days now in advance of the deadline, and that gives you opportunities to reset and explore other opportunities before July 31st. So I think that getting some of your business done ahead of time in this way has been very effective for the Jays, and I think in Stroman's case, the overall numbers clearly for this year are not good. He's got an ERA above 5, but since coming back from the DL, his numbers are much more Marcus Stroman-like. His ERA around 3. We know the way things unfolded in terms of contract negotiations with the salary arbitration hearing this year that Marcus was not pleased with. And so I think that the overall possibility for a long-term deal is relatively remote, at least based on the way things were left in the winter. And his value right now, in the absence of other possibilities, is relatively high because there are not that many other starting pitchers with his pedigree that are available. And so I think that in many ways, despite the fact that his overall season numbers are not great, the scarcity of starting pitching tells me that he has value right now. And the Braves, with 6 of their best 8 prospects, according to MLBpipeline.com, all being pitchers, they have the type of prospect depth in pitching to make this deal worth Toronto's while. So I think that when you look at the circumstances lining up, Alex, of course, knows Marcus very well. So even if there's some anxiety about how maybe his health has gone this year, Alex knows the player exceptionally well to the point that I think this deal actually there are more I think circumstances in place that would be conducive to a deal than we might have otherwise thought, even with Marcus having had the time on the DL earlier this season.